Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, this will be my second video about Chad Daybell. The first video was just my effort to try to arrive at a basic idea of what is going on with Chad. Okay, in my opinion, it's not a diagnosis, just an opinion as a person who has struggled with cluster B issues. It seems to me that Chad is dead center narcissistic, kind of maybe NPD, and with some kind of antisocial features. Okay. Now, in this video, I just want to go a little bit below that. I mean, that was the first video was just 15 minutes to even try to have an idea of what's going on with Chad. Okay, at this point, maybe in this video, I want to try and give a more personalized analysis to maybe some of the what's really unique about Chad, and also what he can maybe teach us all about ourselves. Okay, because I think I firmly believe that every criminal or everybody who falls into criminal conduct has something to teach us. Maybe they're more extreme than we are in everyday life, normal people. But I think even normal people in to a much smaller degree, struggle with the same things that are more extreme in people who end up committing crimes. So the main thing I want to talk about with Chad right now is how, because I think in part because of his Mormon upbringing and the Mormon culture, which is the Mormon culture is a very ideal, a very utopian kind of culture. Um, I think it would be very easy for a person to identify with the most positive personality characteristics, the most, like Chad might say, the most light spirit personality characteristics, and he might have trouble identifying with some of the darker parts of himself. And of course, I want to be careful. I say darker because he would say that. Okay, I try to avoid looking at any personality characteristic as good or bad. I just think of to me, the personality characteristics that we all have are just like characters in a movie. Okay, we can take them as good and bad, or we can take them as just what we're dealing with. Okay, and it's just colors of the rainbow. Okay, now how we deal with things is different. For me, if I have a knife in my kitchen, I could see it as a weapon. Okay, or I could see it as a way to cut vegetables. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing. If I have a part of me that's very sneaky and very manipulative, maybe there are situations where I could do the equivalent of cutting vegetables. I'm not doing any harm, but sometimes it's good to be a little bit tricky because, maybe when you're dealing with people who are difficult, you have to be kind of, wily, I guess, to make things happen in life. It all depends. Every tool depends on how it's employed and the intention behind it. So I don't look at any personality characteristics. I try to avoid looking at any personality characteristics as good or bad. However, I think that a person like Chad would not welcome some of his own personality characteristics. Okay, and so he probably would only identify with the most holy and the most positive characteristics of his Mormon culture. Okay, and yet we see that even in his novels, he finds ways to discharge violence and destruction. And maybe in his choice of working as a grave digger, you see how he sort of a little bit gravitated towards kind of creepy things. And so the point I'm trying to make is that I think all of us in modern society, I think we all live in some kind of a utopian society. And I think for all of us, it would be very difficult to identify with like a I don't know, like a pervert, or with somebody who's violent or whatever, or somebody who's creepy and dishonest. It's not easy for us to identify, but in all honesty, maybe we all do have, to different degrees, we all do have within ourselves, different characteristics that at times could be a little bit weird. Maybe not the proudest parts of us. And so I think all of us struggle to really I identify and own all of maybe the weirder parts of us. But I think someone like Chad, I think he probably really did not identify with some of the darker parts of himself. Okay, so right there, that's a problem, because what's alien inside of you the things that are part of you that are alien to you are things that you're not going to have any real, you don't have any way of kind of negotiating those things. Okay, they sort of operate on their own, you know. And so I think we can see, for example, in the text messages that Chad sent to Lori, we can see that Chad really did express some very sadistic ideas. Okay, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that sadistic ideas have to be bad. That may just be a part of the human experience. But because I don't think Chad really owned that as part of himself. Okay, I think he probably saw himself as being, you know, kind of like, you know, the father is like, hey, I have to spank the kids. You know, I have to spank them. It's what I have to do. He probably thought, well, I have to cause pain to these demons or these children who are, you know, who are possessed by demons. And when he had these emails where he talked about, you know, decreasing the pain tolerance and increasing the pain greatly, you know, to young children. And he accepted that just maybe the same way that a righteous parent, well, I got to spank the kids. I got, you know, what, I don't know. I don't think that he would let himself admit that he had sadistic feelings. Okay, so he probably felt kind of righteous, and yet at the same time, we see that he did have, even though he wouldn't own it, he probably would never own it. He really did have very sadistic attitudes. Another sadistic, very callous attitude. We see that when Charles Vallow died, and Lori called the insurance company to try to collect life insurance, and then found out that she was no longer the beneficiary. She told Chad about this, complaining, and then Chad said, would be, I'm paraphrasing, he said, it would be very interesting if the policy got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest. And the way he said that, that's a pretty callous comment, you know. And I still think that Chad would never admit that he had in himself such a hostility, such a callousness. I don't think he could admit that, and yet it's part of him. Okay, so I think these things are part of him, but I think he thinks of himself as a wholesome Mormon holy man, and so these things are in him, but they're kind of like alien to him, but they're part of him. Okay, so I think, you know, probably a lot of us have that problem, and you never know who's going to be the dangerous one. You know, a lot of us, I probably have things in me that are alien to me but part of me. You know, probably a lot of people do, but it's probably only the rare person where it really is dangerous. You know, but I think you know, even if it's not dangerous for all of us, I think all of us can learn a lesson. You know, maybe to better manage our lives, you know, and to better have a better wisdom, and maybe to be able to relate to people better. You know, maybe some of us have trouble relating to homeless people, or we have trouble relating to drug addicts or whatever. But maybe it would at least help if we could all learn to identify with some of the less, you know, our kind of the things we're not maybe so proud of about ourselves that really are part of ourselves. You know, things that maybe we would not want to admit. Maybe we have to go looking for the things in ourselves that we don't even know about. You know, and to know that there's not just you know, there's not just like protagonists and nice people, you know, inside of ourselves. Maybe we also have some kind of creepy, sort of vindictive or manipulative, or, you know, whatever and so, you know, um, maybe before we try to analyze Chad so much, maybe we should all look to ourselves and think of ways that we may also have things in us that we don't really realize as part of us, or that we don't really own those things as part of us. You know, and the value in that is just wisdom. It's just knowledge. It's just kind of coming down to earth, you know, a little bit, and also maybe being able to relate to other people a little bit better, you know. And so anyway, at least in the case of Chad, we have a person clearly whose self-concept does not include maybe some other parts of him that are kind of alienated to himself. And in his case, very dangerous, because I personally think, okay, my opinion is that if Chad was not teased up by his relationship with Lori, I think he would have been maybe not at such a full boil. I think he was really flamed out by the effect of Lori. So maybe if his fires were maybe a little less hot, he probably would have been a little less dangerous. Okay, but I think Lori kind of lit his fire. And I think one thing that I've learned is that when you have a personality disorder, The higher the flame, the crazier your symptoms. Okay, so maybe Chad would have been only moderately dangerous, but I think Lori kind of got the flame up in Chad, and with that higher flame, I think all of his characteristics were more exaggerated. And I found that to be true in my life. When I'm really, really stimulated, maybe overexcited, maybe over intoxicated by something really fascinating or something really alluring, that has a way of untangling my stuff too. I am also worse as a person. Okay, so I leave a doubt that maybe had Chad not been so enticed by Lori, he probably never would have gotten to the point that he did. Okay, but he was so deranged by the flame that Lori put in him. I think that's where all of his normally maybe a little less severe became more severe, his symptoms. Okay, so basically, to get a little more detailed into my evaluation of Chad, my opinion of Chad, I think he is narcissistic. There's no question. I think he's immature, very immature. Okay, narcissism and immaturity are usually pretty tied together, but I think he really has a remarkable immaturity. He's probably narcissistic plus remarkably immature. And then he has the antisocial features, just features. But you add to that the fact that he has alienated sadistic qualities, the willingness and the ability to put major pain on people and not to care. Okay, for whatever his justification, but he has that part of him. Okay, and so I think that for him, people like Tylee and JJ were not only maybe did they not like Chad, or I guess Tylee probably really didn't like him. I don't know about JJ. It's hard to analyze because he's a much younger kid. But I'll bet you my instinct is that Chad is so ethnocentric and probably so family centric and so egocentric that probably he saw JJ as connected to Charles Vallow, who's kind of an enemy. Okay, and he also represents sort of like the carnal past of his new wife, or girlfriend to be wife, Lori Vallow. So maybe he probably thinks of JJ as part of the past of Lori, like the pre Chad Lori. And so in a very, very severe jealous way, he probably put a lot of dark color on JJ as having to do with Lori's past that didn't have to do with him. Okay, and I'm sure he would have rationalized it as, well, I'm part of her salvation, but we understand that it is fundamentally a reaction to Lori's past that didn't have to do with Chad. Okay, so he probably put a very dark color on the kids. He probably viewed them with very dark colored glasses because at least JJ represented part of Lori's past, and Tylee also, I guess, relate a prior husband, but still Tylee probably represented, I think maybe Chad wanted to think of the pre Chad Lori and the post Chad Lori, whatever. But he probably saw the children as connected to a past that didn't include him. Okay. On top of the fact that, Tylee didn't like Chad, very open about it. And so I'm sure that it just wasn't hard for Chad to summon, or for the sadistic parts of him to really come out under religious justification, but basically ending up being capable of causing terrible harm. And same thing with his wife. He found a justification, roundabout justification, but the bottom line, deep down, he was so infatuated with Lori, and he had very negative attitudes about having to be in his marriage with Tammy. He would write text messages about feeling like Harry Potter. I'm stuck with these terrible people. I'm just waiting to be able to move on to the next stage of my life. And in that situation, he was able to treat Tammy terribly cruelly. I mean, so basically, yes, Lori hit the flame higher for him, but also he had these very, very, I believe, very sadistic qualities that were just too alienated to himself for him to responsibly manage them. On top of the fact that his fire went up with Lori. So that's my final analysis of Chad Daybell. Yeah. Thanks for watching.